Angelique?
Oh.
Number 20.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Number 20 was one of the harder ones that was here in one aspect and easy in another. And the reason I say that is it has a concept on here that we've done in class, but we haven't done it in an equation. Before I start to solve anything, I should always see if there's anything I can simplify. Are there things that I could put together to make the problem easier? What is 2n take away 3n?
-1n. That's what I got confused on. I thought we had to like do the thingy.
Okay.
Majigger thingy.
These are on the same side of the equal sign. I can combine them and put them together to make the problem easier. N is being multiplied by a -1. Now, it's unique in this case. Because it's just a -1, there's two different ways I could solve this. I can multiply by a -1, or I can divide by a -1. Either is going to work. And the reason I want to divide by a negative is because I want to turn my n into a positive. -1 divided by -1 is a positive 1. We don't write down 1n, do we? 2/9 divided by a -1. It doesn't change the fraction, but it does change it from a positive into a negative. Okay? The reason that this one was harder is because we hadn't really talked about in an equation that we could put like terms together. But we did do some problems with like terms earlier this year, didn't we? Where we were combining like things. And that's all we did with them. But we're going to do them in equations soon enough. Okay? Others from this that we'd like to go over.
I just want to go over 7.
Number 7? This is really where we're going to be talking about tomorrow. How to get from the words into an equation. And I'm going to tell you that word problems, once you get used to looking for math words, word problems really aren't that bad. But you've got to know what to look for. When you read an equation, the first thing you should really look for is what are they asking you to find? They're asking how old the father is. That really becomes your variable. That's what they're looking for. That's what a variable is. It's unknown. Karma's age is 2 years less. If it says 2 years less, 2 less means what? That I'm subtracting 2, and I must be subtracting it from something, right? When I see 2 less, I write down -2, and I think about what am I subtracting it from? Okay? It says 3/8 of her father's age. Remember, her father's age is the variable. Of mathematically means multiply. So I'm subtracting it from 3/8 of her father's age. And it said that it is means equals 13. And there's my equation. 3/8 f minus 2 equals 13.
So they had a kid when he was...
I add 2 to both sides, right? That gives me 3/8 f equals 15. I multiply by the reciprocal. 3 went into 15 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. So he was 40 years old at this point.
He had her when he was 27 years old.
What about it?
Okay? Everybody good with that one?
Once you reach the age of
Others that you'd like to go over?
19, 21.
I'm going to do 19 first, and not. Well, just because I don't want to walk back over there and turn my projector back on.
I raised my hand first, and he shouted out.
I'm not going to skip it. Okay. Listen, how many of you honestly are still struggling with the fractions? Be honest. Okay, those of you that are raising your hand, please pay attention. Okay? I've taught you to do it in this problem in 2 steps. The reason I've taught it in 2 steps is because we're working on 2-step equations. I'm going to tell you, I personally think it's easier if you break it apart into 3 steps. And then you won't really be working with the fraction. And hopefully it'll help fill in that gap for some of you. Some of you are already doing it. You've already figured out that you could do it that way. Nothing wrong with it if you figured it out and it works. But I want to make sure that everybody sees it because I think it'll help solidify how to do this problem. I want to get rid of the 80. Everybody's doing that pretty well. How do I get rid of it? I subtract it. I'm left with this. Now, yesterday I said we could multiply by the reciprocal, and we still can. There's nothing wrong with that method. But when we're multiplying by reciprocal, people forget about cross-canceling. They kind of get lost in that fractional piece. Remember that a fraction is nothing more than a division problem. This is saying 5 divided by 16. How do I get rid of division? If I multiply both sides right now by 16, what's going to happen to my 16s on the left? They're going to cancel, and it's just going to leave me 5y. 20 times 16. 320. What would be left? 5y equals 320, so what would I do? Divide by 5. Did I have to work with a fraction doing it this way? No, not at all. And when I go to do this one, I'm going to come up with 64. Does that help some of you with the fractions? I've done them in 2 steps because we're working with 2-step equations, but you can break it apart into a 3-step process, and it makes it easier. That was 3 steps. First step here, right? This was step 1. Step 2, I multiplied. Step 3, I divided. Right.
So if you're adding, would you subtraction? Would you subtract like the smallest number, like from that's not like the division thing, like the 80 instead of the 100? That sounds stupid.
I'm just lost with what you said. If we come across an example, we'll look at what you're talking about. I'm not sure I understood.
I sound stupid now that I'm thinking about it because I answer my own question.
Okay. Others that we want to work out. Anybody? Number 25, I know I got to do. I didn't. 21. That's what I meant. There's no 25. It is 26.
It is?
Okay. I'm going to tell you that this particular problem can be tricky. And here's why. They told me that this first cup was 10 centimeters. They told me all the rest of these cups were 0.8 each. Right? So if I add the 10 centimeters plus the 0.8x, it should be equal to the 30 centimeters that they want me to have. Everybody with me how I wrote the equation? If I subtract 10 from both sides, I have 0.8 equals 20. And when I divide by 0.8, I get x is equal to 25. Why did I get 25 and 25 is not my answer?
Because you still have that first cup.
Remember, the 25 cups are in this part of the stack. I also have what? The cup I started with, and 25 plus 1 is 26. That's why there's 26 cups in the stack. Jackson, that answer your question?
I was just confused. I just noticed that when I looked in the answer key and I didn't see it and I saw 26, so I was like, oh, add that extra cup.
And I'm going to tell you that this type of question might be an extended response question on the FSA, and if it was, you wouldn't see those possible answers, would you? And getting it all right is what's going to separate people from level 3s to level 4s and 5s. Okay? Being able to make that last connection is going to separate people.
Do you know what you have to score to get into like
I cannot answer that question this year. I have no clue.
Do you know what it was for like last
I cannot tell you because last year was different. It was unique. I mean, I just can't answer those questions. I don't know. Can't answer that either. I think they're going to have the first portion of your FSA scores with your report cards, and I think that they're going to, sometime in January, come out with the level. But they haven't leveled them yet.
That's forever. That's like a year.
Yep, I agree. It's a long time.
I don't like that. They make us learn it.
Well, it was the first year, and everybody knows that the first year they're doing something, they had kinks and problems,
They should do their best the first year. Yeah.
but they didn't.
But they should.
Okay, let's go back to the worksheet. Were there more questions that we needed to work out? Anybody?
18. 20.
I did 20.
18. 7. We were just supposed to be wasting time.
Now you're just going for random numbers.
I don't recall opening the floor to everybody to speak.
What does that mean? That means
Allowing anyone to speak.
What do they teach you in civics?
Civic. Read the preamble.
You're going to go to court this year, right?
Yeah.
Right?
And
And you're going to go, if you're, I don't know, you probably won't go, but you should sometime watch a Senate hearing or something like that. You should watch something like that, because when one person is speaking, it means that they have the floor. And that everybody else is what? Quiet. The only time that you really have the floor is when you're supposed to be asking questions. Or when I personally said, what is the answer? And then you have the floor for that moment, right? I don't remember opening the floor for conversation. If I'm going to work out this problem, I want to get the variable by itself. How do I get rid of subtraction? Addition.
Add 13, both sides.
I still see a lot of people making mistakes here. One's negative, one's positive. Okay? I have to subtract them. I keep the sign of the larger. 13 is the larger absolute value. 13 minus 4 is 9. I divide both sides by 12. T equals 9 over 12. But that will simplify. What will go into both 9 and 12? 3. So this will simplify to 3/4.
I understand.
that you have to choose a number with the largest absolute value. If it's negative 13 and 13, they have the same absolute value.
Then you'd get 0. If they're exact opposites of each other, it's going to be what? 0, and it doesn't have a sign. Yes?
Yeah, so wouldn't you just choose the number with the largest value?
No, the largest absolute value. Always. That determines the sign. And it determines the order in which you subtract them. The largest absolute value is on the top, 13. Negative 13 is on the bottom, and you subtract. 13 minus 13 is 0. But it doesn't have a sign. It's not positive or negative. Other questions from this? Once, twice,
So,
so.
too many.